Recording is all right. Here we go. We've got Dr. Vicki Parker here from the Brain Trainer. I apologize, and welcome, Dr. Parker.
Hi. I hope you guys are all doing well. Pretty impressed that you're all online. So Jane asked me to talk a little bit about your mental health, brain, and I'm wondering, you can just kind of raise your hands or answer in the chat box. I'm sure that most of you have had goals for your physical health through the years. And if any of you have ever had a resolution or some thoughts about your mental health. So I wonder, you guys can kind of just put up your hands if you ever have. I'm kind of wondering, oh, a couple, okay. Jane did, that's great. Okay, so usually what I find is most people are concerned about their physical health. And we're going to kind of talk about the different ways to help your brain stay strong. I'm going to skip through that. So this is according to the Dana Research Organization, and it's another organization that you can join for free and get updates from them, typically online, but you just enter dana.org and you can sign up for all their stuff. And they do a lot of publishing of research related to the brain in many areas. So what they say is only 30% of your aging and your brain health is genetics. And so that means 70% is up to you and what you do. And this is kind of interesting. I was looking this up for another talk I did somewhere else. And in 2019, if you're 65, 3% of the people will go on to be centennials. Is that how I say it correctly? 100-year-old. And 5.9% women. And this was a little caveat that I found interesting. Our average life expectancy here in the US is 78.87, but just a little bit north of us in Canada, they have an age expectancy of 3 years longer than us, 8.2. I'm 82.0. So what are they doing right in Canada? So that's kind of fun little piece of trivia to know. What is important for your brain is really the networks and the connections. So when they looked at Albert Einstein's brain, and they have his brain at Princeton in New Jersey where he taught, what they noticed were different areas had a lot of dense matter, very dense. So his brain might have been, the same size, looked like everyone else's, but was very dense. And what that means is he had a lot of associations, a lot of connections. So he related a lot of things together and he learned things in different ways. And when you do that, your synapses make your brain denser and make your processing speed faster. So that's really what you're looking for and why your brain can learn so much. And then the next question people ask me, well, if things aren't related, how strong is it? Like if it's a lot of trivia. My mom would say to me sometimes, oh, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to fill up my brain with trivia. But actually, the more you know, the more is connection. And that's not a good way to feel. And to move things along, to be more automatic and stronger, it takes 200 to 10,000 trials of practice to move from being a novice at something to an expert. So you want to work on those associations and knowing things in different ways. So this is kind of a little like a David Letterman. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these things. I'm going to get most of them on the screen so we can just talk about them all at once, and then we'll go through them a little slower pace so you can read these. But these are the best things for your brain. So with the research, a lot of the things that they've shown that are really good for your brain, and I heard Pinky talking about this earlier, she walks the track, is actually cardiovascular exercise. Anything you do well for your heart is good for your brain. So heart health is actually brain health. So it is important to get movement in. Our brains need oxygen. And that delivers to our blood vessels and helps our brains just feel more alert. And that's what a lot of time outside with nature, you're getting, it's another brain health, you're getting your vitamin D, you're seeing things that are new and novel because a bug appears, a bird appears, a dog barks. So your brain likes new and novel. It likes to sort it out. What was that noise? It likes to match it. I think it was related to a woodpecker, I think. And all those things, those challenges to your brain on a regular basis that are random, help your brain grow and make it strong. Okay? So outside, if you can walk or golf, ride bike, all those things right now with COVID are still things that you can do outside, or take your yoga mat outside on your balcony or something like that. So those are all things that are really good for your brain. We're gonna take this next one kind of together. So diet and hydration matters. So with your diet, again, cardiovascular things that you do for your diet, the omega-3s and fruits and vegetables are what is also good for your brain. So your brain isn't so great with sugars and salts and things like that. Hydration matters. A lot of times, one of the ways people enter the hospital is they're a little confused. They don't seem to be themselves. They're dehydrated. So hydration matters as you age. And also we find people who have ADD, ADHD, they do better if they're well hydrated. They're able to focus more. So we really have to pay attention to making sure we're really hydrated. We're going to talk about these next three a little bit together too. And socialization, learning something new, concerted effort. Those are things that are helpful for our brain. Okay, so socialization is harder a little bit during this time of COVID, and we have to really plan and think about it, but hopefully you guys are doing more and more of the alternatives as you get more comfortable with it. I know a lot of more people are doing Zoom, and I know for myself, sometimes my friends that I used to talk to around the holidays or special occasions, now we're making sure we talk to each other monthly, so that list is elevated. Sometimes we will go to something, a Zoom cooking class or something like this, and we will do it jointly together and be on our phones texting or talking. Since we're just listening to the presentation. So I'm trying with my friends and relatives to connect more often. Other things that are helpful is sometimes you might have a pen pal or trying to get one. Nowadays we do it by email. So again, I met people when I was traveling and kept up with them typically once a year or twice a year on their birthday, and then at the holidays. And now I'm regularly emailing them what's happening in your country. This is what's happening here. I'm really trying to go the extra mile to try to stay engaged. And the reason we want to do that is when we're engaged with others, we tend to be, unless there's a lot of drama, less stressed. And we then lower our cortisol, which we need it to get through stressful situations, but we don't want it running all the time. It's not healthy for our brain, okay? And then learning something new is really important. So I remember when I was talking to companies a lot, and we would talk about, wow, from 0 to 27, your learning curve is straight up, and you are learning new things that you're exposed to, whether you want to be exposed to them or not. And then maybe from 27 to 40, it's still going up, but not as strong, your learning curve. But maybe you're learning things more in depth, or you are getting a little broader, trying more hobbies. And then from 40 to 60, in the United States, it really seems to flatten. And why does it do that? Well, typically we're not taking on as many new challenges, and we are actually in our work environments often delegating things off. So we're not trying new things, and it is in the toil and learning something new that we actually expand.
That Pinky had asked us on the
Our
brain.
brain is probably helping your brain the most. Are you guys still hearing me? I'm getting a message that something's muted.
Yeah, I had to mute everybody and it muted you too because there was some.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted, you're good. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So, and then what happens in the United States a lot of times is from 60 to 80 or whatever, we say, wow, it's my time to retire and do what I want. And we typically want to do what we're already good at and what we know, which is great. We can reward ourselves with that. But if we're not learning new things and toiling through a new process, we typically are not doing as much good for our brain, okay? So for example, if you've always done crossword puzzles, keep doing them. It's great, you enjoy them. But if you want to up the ante with your brain, maybe try Sudoku or logic and reasoning workbooks, things like that. So you have to change it up to make a challenge for your brain, okay? So the next area is about managing stress, staying positive, and sleep. These are areas that are hard to keep control of a little bit during this time because we feel less control. And that is a big stress manager, thinking about what you can control and what you can get rid of. And I also say different things work for different people. So if you tried one Tai Chi or something to help with stress or yoga and didn't like it, well, there's another type of Tai Chi or yoga, and maybe try that. You might like that. When we talk about staying positive, there is a lot of research that shows that negative feedback loops in your brain, even saying, I'm bored, this is so boring, is not helpful for you. So you need to try to just say it differently. So maybe on the phone with my friends, I say, yeah, nothing really special happened today. Let's make a goal of talking about one thing we learned today, or let's make a promise to talk to each other about art today. Tomorrow, let's make a promise to talk to each other about our pets, our dogs. So if we name something and have that focus, sometimes it gets us out of that negative loop. And so that sometimes is helpful for people. To talk about sleep and how that affects your brain. So we do need sleep. And what is important about sleep is it is a time of repair for your brain. And it is a time that we move short-term memories into long-term memory. So it's needed. So it's really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to try to move this screen. It's a little bit different. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about these things, and hopefully that will spurt some ideas for all of you. We're going to talk a little bit about general brain health, and then we're going to talk about more what I do every day and the areas of your brain that I work with. Okay? So we already talked about that anything good for your heart is good for your brain. But what you need to know is the best activities are bilateral. Okay? So for example, golf is really not a bilateral activity, swinging that. It's not as good for you as, for example, swimming, dancing, walking. Those are some of the best activities for you to do. They're bilateral, and they make your brain work a little better, stronger. And so those are the most desirable activities. Now, during COVID, I felt like my movement had been good. So one of the things I did is get a resistor, or a lot of people call them pedalers. And I think I got it at Target for like $50. It goes under my desk, and not here at work, at home. But if I'm doing a lot of Zoom calls, or I'm doing more phone calls with friends and family than I used to, I'm pedaling away when I'm on those calls. And that was kind of an easy fix to help get my movement back up there. Okay. And the other thing, again, as much as you can do outside that's safe is helpful. So I did get a pandemic puppy. I'm doing puppy training in my backyard, and I'm using my backyard almost like a pool, doing lengths. Okay, so the puppy and I are practicing walking lengths of weight and calm and things like that. So there's different things you can do even during this time of a little bit more isolation. So again, cardiovascular, good for your brain. These are some things that I've talked to other people that they're working on doing. So I just wanted to share some of these ideas. So when you're outside with nature, to make it take a little bit longer, instead of going out 10 minutes later, coming back in, some of my friends are logging the birds and animals in their backyard and their habit patterns. Okay, I have this woodpecker. He comes every day. He comes at the same time. He likes a certain tree. He likes this part of my house. You know, they're just trying to watch it at a closer rate. There are other birds they're trying to identify that maybe before they sit out back and they listen to the birds in general, things like that. But now they're making a concerted effort to maybe learn a little bit more about them. And we've already talked about biking and walking. Again, gardening is good for you if you have a big yard and have access to that. But a simple fix is, again, herbs in pots. So easy, you have to watch on it. It gets you outside every day, making sure that they're growing, they have enough water, going to clip them for cooking, learning how to dry them, all those kinds of things. The other thing that I've heard from a lot of people that's been helpful to try to up their number of steps is they're really trying to investigate small parks in nature preserves where there is actually just less people that know about that space. And so they're exploring a little bit more than they maybe would have previously. They might have gone to a walkway, or they might have gone to Grandfather Mountain, but now they're trying to push that a little bit more. We talked earlier about this, diet and hydration. Some of this we already talked about, but remember, experimenting with foods is, again, new and novel sensations with smell and taste, and that is helpful for your brain. And it's a great time to share recipes. You have a little more downtime. My sister-in-law comes from another country. I've been asking her for some recipes, so it's fun to talk to her. And her daughter, who's 7, is actually learning to cook because they have more time, and she's sharing more of those recipes. So it's a great time to share things that you might not have had time for, and people want exposure to new things. So with this next one, we've talked socialization, learning something new, challenging. As much as possible, try to get people involved in it. We do learn from books. We do learn from the Discovery Channel, but we really ingrain things when we talk about our experiences with others, talking about that book, talking about that show, watching it together and making comments, even if that's over the phone. And if you think about kids and their development, really, when they learn vocabulary, they learn habits, they learn how to put sentences together. They do learn from TV. They do learn from looking at books, but mostly they learn from their parents and their peers and the other adults around them. That's where we really enrich ourselves in our learning. It's that comparison. It's that challenge of information, or I do it a little differently, or listen to that, that helps expand your brain a little bit. We talked about some of this here, but the one thing we didn't talk about with sleep, of course, we try to get good sleep. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I just try to push through as much as I can, not take a nap. And naps are really actually healthy for your brain. In other places other than the United States, it's culturally okay to take naps. And actually, we shouldn't feel so guilty about it. Sometimes we don't want to miss a long time, so put on your alarm after 20 minutes, 45 minutes. But a good nap is no guilt. It is good for your brain. So we want to move past that a little bit. We talked about this. Okay, so this is the area that I work on most with brain health, but we do need that big footing of what is healthy for your brain. So I work with people on attention, how they focus, if they can sustain their attention over time, if they're able to work through some distractions, what is it like to have divided attention, their short-term and working memory, which is actually the background for how we learn, and it's more associated with achievement and success than almost anything else, than IQ or grades or anything like that. Auditory processing is not how we hear, but what our brain does with the information that it takes in. Visual processing is the same. Visual acuity is glasses. How do I see? Visual processing is how our brain takes in that information. Processing speed is how, once the information's there, how your brain is able to use that information and then execute. Logic and reasoning is how we understand patterns, problem solve our alternatives. Long-term memories, holding more information longer. And I would add, being a speech pathologist, that language and communication are one of the foundation skills that really changes your ability. People who speak 4 or more languages, they've done studies of this in multiple countries, typically have higher IQs, higher cognitive performance than people who speak just 1 or 2 languages. So that really makes a difference in your ability. So it's never too late to learn. Again, something new and challenging Or a lot of times what's happening are people maybe had a little bit of training in French or Spanish in high school and college, haven't used it in years. And with some of the free applications, Babbel and others, they're going back and trying to pick up those skills and improve on those abilities. So usually when I start with someone, we do testing to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. But you can think about yourself. Well, what are my strengths? Am I really good remembering things visually? Or do I remember every conversation I've had auditorily or the script of it? Am I really good at puzzles? No. So when you think about your strengths, then it's good to think about what activities you do to support those strengths. Then you can think about the things that you say, no, I'm not going to go to that. I'm not good at that. Maybe a Zoom class. It used to be dancing or something like that, a Roomba class or whatever. And the reason you want to do that, know your strengths and weaknesses, is when you want to up your game, you actually are going to pair your strengths with your weaknesses. So for example, if you're very strong doing puzzles and visually with a lot of visual games, maybe you play Rummikub or Mahjong or whatever. Sometimes if your auditory memory skills are weaker, we're going to start out doing a lot of visual memory activities and games, and then move those that are similar to auditory skills. So you have the baseline skill, and then we're moving in your weaker skill. So you guys can each think of this. What do you currently are strong with? What are you currently weak with? And then kind of start coming up with a plan for yourself. So you have to think, this is what I want to do better, and start to brainstorm. This is what I want to do better. So what are the skills that are used with that, and how do I get there? And then prioritize. So we typically don't work on everything at once, but when we do work, it is helpful to do a feedback log. What area did I target? What was I doing? How did it work out? And how am I going to adjust it for my next time? So that's how you'll typically will make more progress, analyzing what you want to get done and how you are doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about attention and building attention. So typically, if you want to sustain your attention, activities that will sustain your attention are such like word searches. You can even take old magazines and say, I'm going to circle the letter S. I'm going to circle the word the. You can go through those and just see how fast you can do it. And if you're pretty accurate, or when you recheck it, did you miss a lot? If you are working on something and you give yourself a time limit, you typically unknowingly increase your focus, and often will get a hyper focus. And so that's a good thing, to give yourself a time. If you're having difficulty focusing, you're working on something, maybe you're reading a book, say, I'm going to read this book for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to get up and I'm going to change my environment, and then I'm going to do something different. You can decide to do something different, or if you want to continue reading, then you make a split. Okay, I'm going to go up the stairs and put this in my room. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then return and say, okay, now I'm going to read for 20 minutes. So you give yourself focus breaks, and then another time limit to get back to what you are doing. A lot of people come in to me for memory evaluations, and a lot of time it is that they just are not, they don't have real memory problems, that they are just inattentive or overloaded to everything that's going on in their world. There's just too much. And sometimes you need to just slow down and focus. And it's okay to talk to yourself. I've had people say, well, I feel funny talking to myself. No, it's fine to do. It's a good strategy that lots of people use. So you take your keys and you might say, when you walk in your house, instead of just throwing it down and then having to search for it later on or missing it when you need it quickly, you look at it and you say, I'm putting my key down next to the microwave. And then you put it down there and move on with your next task. That you were intentional about it, you looked at it, placed it down, said something, you're more likely to remember it and be able to head back to it. So that is something that will help with your focus and your attention. There are a lot of different types of memory. And when you come in for an evaluation, we typically look at what are the strengths and weaknesses. Auditory, visual, immediate. Immediate's usually repeating something right away, around 2 seconds. What is more short-term or working memory? And when we look at working memory, so the average working memory is 7 units, plus or minus 2. So you often are thinking of a phone number, but the average is between 5 units and 9 units. Most things, we're not going to remember each thing separately. We're going to remember it in groups. 704, that's really 1 unit, because you're really not remembering 704, 704. Okay, so that's 1 unit. What is average, again, is 7 plus or minus 2 units. So between 5 and 9 units are average memory. Long-term memory is usually something we've held for a long time. We've practiced it. It becomes really automatic. And we do want to get things automatic. If they're automatic, we usually can go to the next level better. So those who have to every time think 7 and 8, okay, 7 times 8 is 16, 24, 34, or 32, 40, 48, 56. It's slower for them to get it instead of somebody who just automatically 7 times 8 is 56, okay? So once you have it in long-term memory, it's easier to move to higher levels. It doesn't take as much time and you're at less risk of losing information along the way, okay? Let's see, here we go. Okay. So when you are trying to improve your memory, you really want to work on short-term and working memory. You don't have to work so much on remembering the past or trivia from the past. You want to work on here and now. But delays and doing things over and over will help you. So, for example, little pop quizzes that you want to remember. You can do it to yourself. I want to remember my hair appointment, my doctor's appointment, or I want to remember so-and-so's birthday. So if you put it on your refrigerator, you put it on your back door, you put it on your mirror in the morning, and every time you go there, you make a habit of saying it, you will remember it better. My daughter had problems when she was younger remembering her multiplication tables. So we did it in interval instead of sitting down and drilling. Every time she got into the car or every time she came up to me before we had a conversation, I might say to her, 7 times 8 is And then she would say 56. Well, now she can do her multiplications really well because we did it interval, not a big block. And so she really learned that. Again, with if you can work on some new learning at this time when we're in COVID, you just strengthen your memory for many other things. So learning a new language, taking up maybe dance steps, trying some music, looking at maps, teaching somebody else something is one way to really organize your thoughts, which helps memory, and hold the information in memory a little bit longer. Okay, so volunteer to teach somebody something new. It will help you a lot. So these are the typical strategies for memory. We talked about spaced retrieval. Typically, spaced retrieval is an interval. We learn something, we repeat it in 5 minutes, we repeat it in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 2 hours, next day, and every other day if we really want to learn it. And that's how people make it automatic and they learn it. Another way to learn something is to visualize it. So if we're reading and we want to remember the story, if we get to the end of the paragraph and say to ourselves, this is what it would look like if I was watching a movie, and make the scene and tell yourself the scene, you will more likely start remembering the book the more you visualize it. People who love reading and remember books, typically they have visualized the story long before they see the movie. They just see it playing in their head. And when you can do that, you've really made a good hook to your memory. In a little bit, we're going to try some location marking just for fun in memory. And I'll talk about that. That's another way to practice memory. So we're remembering things visually. To move around information, maybe draw it, put it in graphs that you might hand draw, pie graphs or something like that. Or if you're savvy with the computer, anything you can do to move information around helps your memory. You're going to hold it longer. And then pre-focusing or priming is something else that helps memory. And this is one that's really fun to do with friends. And you can do it before you watch a movie or a TV show. Talk about what you think is going to happen. It doesn't matter what's going to happen, but you're getting your mind ready for the characters, for typically what happens. If it's a book, looking at the chapter titles, knowing, okay, they're going to do this chronologically or they're doing this very whimsically. It's just getting your mind ready, organizing the information, thinking of what questions you have ahead of time. If you're going to hear a speaker, if you're going to hear a lecture, or if you're going to watch a discovery show, and writing those questions down. See if they cover them. They might not. That's okay. You still got your mind ready. And pre-focusing does help you remember more information. Okay, we talked about spaced retrieval a little bit. I want to get so you can do a little bit of play. Our time is going pretty fast. We talked a little bit about repetition. Repetition, the reason you want to make things so automatic, as I said before, is we don't want to have to utilize every part of our brain, the frontal lobe, subcortical areas, for basic information. We want to use that for higher level. And the more things are automatic, the more you can bypass those areas. Okay, so here we're going to play. And do you guys remember like Hollywood Squares, like those 9 places? want you to kind of think about that. And we're going to remember things by location. Okay, so I'm going to try to turn this a little bit. Okay. So this, you were looking at this and practicing this by location. This would be quarter or 25, space, 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 dime, space, penny, space. And so then if I cover that up, what I want to remember, how I remember it is a lot about, I almost draw a shape like a triangle. Okay, so it was quarter, dime, penny. But if I take it off the screen, I can't see it. I can still say, okay, it was space, space, quarter, dime, space, 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 penny, space. So I can remember it by location and in my mind, seeing a shape. And that's something that you guys can practice. You can make your own grid. It's like a tic-tac-toe grid. And I have people put cards on it. I have them put pictures of people on it. And then they practice where it was. They cover it up, say it to themselves, and then take a peek. Did I get it right? That's something kind of fun to do. So let's see. Oops, I'm trying to move this to the next one. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys look at this for about 4 seconds. So try to think about it because there's 4 coins. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you can think of any groups, how you remembered it. Okay, so let's see what you guys can remember. Try to think about it. Maybe say it out loud. Do you remember any of it? So it was penny, space, space, and this row had 2 things, dime, space, penny, space, dime, space. Okay, let's see if I can go back. Yay. Okay, so did any of you remember it and get it?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, and you can do it with coins or something like that. Just trying to remember how I remember it too. So I group things a lot and chunk them. So I kind of remembered this triangle, penny, penny, dime, and then here at the bottom was another dime. Okay, so I remembered 2 groups, the triangle and this one here. A lot of people would have remembered this diagonal as the 2 pennies and this diagonal as the 2 dimes. Okay, how did you guys remember it? Yeah, you can think about it. You did any grouping?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's another kind of fun memory thing. I want to do this too because we're getting a little bit low on time, but I want to also tell you some games that I like for different things before we start this. So for attention, you know, I told you I love word searches. That does a lot of focus. There's some games that you are trying to turn over cards quickly as you can and focus on like one card. You give yourself a task. Let's say it's the spade, the ace of spades. Okay, so you're running through it as quick as you can, turning the cards, see if you can, whoever you're with or just yourself, if you can find that card really quickly. So you're attentive to one card and how fast you can do it. Or you can give yourself, I'm looking for all the aces. How fast can I go through a deck of cards and find them? And you can time yourself and look at it like that. So with memory, I really love the games Distraction, if you guys have ever heard of that. It's by Think Fun. If you guys buy yourself any games, that's a really good one. The old Simon is still out there. You can actually get that a lot of times at garage sales, is another fun one to use. And this one, we're going to work on putting pictures together to make sentences. So all you're going to do here is look at the picture and say the word. Zip, Kate ran to over. Okay, and then here are those symbols in a different order. So can any of you remember those symbols? And what does your sentence say? You can write it for yourself. So this one, that triangle, that blue triangle was zip. I don't know if you guys remember that. Zip, and then this was the verb, ran over
To
to
Kate.
Zip ran over to Kate. So you have a sentence with all those symbols, and that really somewhat helps your memory. Zip ran over to Kate. All right, I'm gonna skip this. This is more of the same. Gonna go past that visualizing. So one of the reasons visualization is so good for memory is it uses more areas of your brain. You're typically using your auditory area as you give it a verbal push, your visual pathways, and your associations. So that's why that is so strong to visualize things. And we use visualization actually beforehand if we want to see something happen. So some of the people that I work with, they want to get better at doing something. So they actually are practicing, maybe it's interviewing or speaking in public. So they actually practice visualizing themselves doing it well. They're using their auditory visual skills associations in their memory pathways to do a little bit better. What the research shows is that if we start a task and we want to really learn it, to try to start making the task a little bit harder or come at it in new ways. And it's okay to interrupt it. So for example, when we were doing the coins, if I would have made you count by 2, 4, 6, 8, and looking at those coins, it would have made the task harder, and you would have complained to me, I can do it better if you're just quiet, or we don't say that. And it's true, you'll get it better the first time. But by having the interruptions and making it harder, you typically will hold on to it longer. So it's okay to study or practice like that. Pre-focusing, we talked about this a little bit as a way to remember things better, but think about all the places that you can pre-focus. You can look at your calendar for the week and see what's happening, and think about those things ahead of time. Maybe draw your friends on there, or that you're going to take a walk. You can look at reading reviews before you read the book or before you do the movie. So all that preparation of your brain for what is going to happen makes you hold those memories better and longer in more detail. So my favorite pre-focusing is brainstorming. So before I go out, maybe with my daughter to explore something, we might sit and say, what are the things we're going to see today? What are we going to do today? And we just brainstorm back and forth. And then we're a little bit more ready when we go out to do it, to pick up on it and see it. I think we're going to see walking ants. I think we're going to see nests today. It's the time of year where there's more nests out. Whatever you can think of, just make sure you thinking about it intentionally. When you manipulate information, so saying it out of order and backwards and reorganizing it, saying it in different ways, role playing it, trying to teach it to somebody else, comparing it with something, you're gonna know it better. And these are techniques a lot of times we think of with academics, but we also, if we use them in our everyday life, we do remember things better. Okay, and then there's, of course, the strategy for memory using accommodations, alarms in your computer. And there's nothing wrong with those things. They will help you. They don't develop your hippocampus, your memory area, and other areas of your brain as well. They've done a lot of studies, like with cab drivers. You've probably heard of some of those studies. And those people who learned it and don't use their GPS and their routes, they build better memories to get to those areas. So typically what I do is I use my GPS maybe the first time to get there, or maybe I print it out just in case. And when I go back there the second time, or I try to get home, I try to do that without that instrumentation and only use that instrumentation when I need it. Because that way I'm building a better brain, a stronger brain. The other area that we want to talk about quickly, I think there's this and one more area. So we've got like 3 minutes. I think we'll get through it. So logic and reasoning is actually the area that people as they age hold on to one of the best. They did a multi-site, I think it was 6 sites with a large number of people and of many areas, their language, their memory, their visual skills, their auditory skills. And one of the areas that people held on to the longest with their abilities is their logic and reasoning. So understanding patterns, comparing and contrasting, thinking of options, and keeping mental flexibility. So it is important to have these things well ingrained. And the games I love for this is actually a lot of logic and reasoning workbooks. Sudoku. I still love that there's a lot of games like chess for single players, or Rush Hour, a game that you might have played with your kids, but you can play it by yourself. And these help a lot of logic and reasoning abilities. So I would kind of look for some of those that are great to do that. Visual and auditory processing, again, this isn't acuity. It's how your brain processes, but the acuity comes first, because if you're still not checking your eyes and your ears and not doing it on a regular basis and getting updated prescriptions, you're not getting in as good information. And what you take in is important. People who have hearing loss or outdated visual glasses prescriptions, when they do cognitive testing, they deteriorate faster. So you want to keep your acuity up to get in the best information. We talked about this a little bit. Okay, processing speed. That is the thing that deteriorates the most as we age, and it is actually the hardest to keep up and to make strong once it is weak. So for example, like somebody who has a head injury, they're not losing processing speed with age, but with disability. And it's harder to get it back up. The best ways to practice are doing thing yourself, doing things that you take a baseline time for and see if you can do it again. Tennis is a speed sport. You can do verbal speed things. You can say to yourself, here's the letter S, like in Sam. Take a stopwatch. How many words can I think of that starts with S? And hopefully you can get close to 20 or more in a minute. If you want to make it a little bit harder, you can add more letters. How many words can I think of that use the letters C and L? Okay, clear, clarinet, clap. And as, again, see how many you can get in a minute. If you still want to make it harder, how many words can I think of that use C and L and R in that order in a minute? See if you can keep building up with that. Also, games like Taboo, Password, they help with verbal speed. You can YouTube. A lot of finger exercises have to do with speed and keeping speed up. And that's a fine motor task, but you want to do it. So this one's coming in and going out, touching every finger once except the ends. Or a next harder level would be a wave. So starting with the left and going right with both hands. It's easier to do where you're starting with the same fingers going in and out. But you can look at YouTube for some of those things too. That will be about some processing speed. Okay, so this is how we make gains. The more intensive you are, and a lot of cognitive training is like sports training. The more intensive we do it, the better. We do need repetitive practice. You can't do the same things you've been doing before and expecting to maintain your abilities or to do better. You have to keep looking for challenges to keep your current level or to do better. Okay, there are typically hierarchies of how to make things harder, but also there is an emotional component, and the more fun and humor you have with it, and you're doing it with friends, then you do better with those things than trying them always alone. But you can make those improvements. We're going to skip that. I don't know if there were a few questions I didn't see. And I don't know if I have it. I don't see anything on a chat. Let's see if I can stop sharing that. Okay. Oh, I guess there's 2 questions on a chat. Let's see if I can answer those quickly. Okay, no real questions on the chat. Are there any questions before I have to leave? No. Okay. Well, I hope you, Jane, I think you have that presentation, so you can share that with people. And usually people on Zoom, they have access to those presentations.
Yeah, I can share this presentation if you want to watch it again. Are there any particular free sites that you use for games or suggest to use, Dr. Parker?
Well, a lot of the people I work with, the people who are really pushing their memory skills are executives, and they want to improve their attention and their memory. And they're using things like CogMed. But I would say, anything that's new and novel, or, get out some old games and teach somebody else how to play them, or figure out if there's a way that you can play them by yourself. I love qubits. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of qubits, but you get these cards and you get these things, and you're supposed to have 4 players or so, and you all race to get this card done. But you can look at this card and use these tiles to make these figures. And if you want to make it more difficult, you can look at this card, count to 20, then flip it over, and then try to put the cubes together from memory. If you even get half of it done, look at it again and say, okay, I got half of it done. Now I'm looking at it more carefully, get the other half done, keep turning it back over. So although this is a game for 4 people, you can make it for something that you can do.
We always used to play with a deck of cards. You turn them all over, and then you try and turn over 2 pairs. That's similar to what you've done, but we used to play that as kids all the time. It's a great thing to play with kids.
Any of those concentration memory matching games are still great. And a lot of people say, well, I'm bored doing it with just cards. Well, one of the things I've had people do is do it with pictures of their family or their friends, making some of those pictures, doing it with other types of card decks. Okay, so here I have lots of different card decks. So you guys typically don't, but you can find a lot of different card decks in stores. So those, you can do a lot of different things with them. So luminosity, I think, is okay. Somebody has a question here, Kathy. Luminosity is okay. It is made, and it's just like this stuff, it's made for the masses and it will improve you. So a lot of things that I use, it's based on the individual's profile and it targets the areas that are their strengths and weaknesses. And so I'm used to working more with those things because people don't need to see me for luminosity because they can just buy a subscription to it. But I think, you know, that's fine. And if you've been doing that a while, maybe look for something else. If you haven't ever done it, it will be of help to you. So because it's new and novel and you're taking on a new challenge. There was another question, I think, about sleep. I am not a physician. I am a PhD. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand with that. But typically with sleep, you need to talk to your own physician about how you feel. I think most people, they want you to have at least 5 hours, sometimes more. It doesn't always have to be all at once. As I said, if you have 5 hours, but you're feeling like I'm really tired at 4:30 and I can't keep going, you might not push through it. You might say, you know what? I need 45 minutes of downtime. Turn off the technology because that divides your attention. Put an alarm on and take your 45 minutes. And then you might feel refreshed and able to then go from 5:30 till 9 or 10. You know, so there's not this one amount of time that I understand from the physicians that each person should have, but typically they talk about a minimum, I think, of around 5 hours. Any other questions? I think I got, let's see, all of them. Okay.
You did, and I know you have to go and you have a patient waiting, so I just wanted to thank you so much.
Yes.
If you guys want to hold on for just a second, I'm going to talk to you about next week, but I don't want to hold up Dr. Parker while I do that. So Dr. Parker, that was fabulous. I mean, I got some new things to think about because I find that, you know, my memory is not all that I want it to be either. I played Spit. I don't know if anybody ever played it long ago with my daughter when she was home for college when this first started, and my processing speed was frightening to me. Like I didn't even realize how bad it was till I tried to play that game. But then I realized the more I played it with her, the better it got. So I think we need to stay positive about this and just keep, you know, we have time to do it now. So it's a great thing to focus on. But thank you. This was awesome. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again in the future. And we really appreciate you today.
Sure. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
guys. So, guys, Dr. Parker, if you need to run, I'm just going to kind of preview next week. And if you need to run, I understand we've held you over time. But, guys, I thought she was great. I hope you enjoyed her, too.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Next week, I'm really excited about this because this couldn't be more topical, but we're having a speaker from the youcanvote.org organization. And so Zion's going to be here next week at 4 to talk to us about how all this is going to work. So you'll learn up-to-date voting laws, the 2020 election schedule and what's on the ballot, how to successfully educate and motivate voters to cast their ballot, the voter registration practices, the whole bit. And so I'm super excited. This is very topical, very important information. So please share this. It's the same Zoom login. It will be part of my Monday email again, but please share this because I'm just not sure there's anything more important right now than for us to, you know, do our civic duty and figure out how this is going to work this year. So I'm just looking forward to seeing you guys all again next week. And as all the things she's talking about last week, if you weren't on, the stuff that CMS Library is doing is amazing. So if you didn't see that and you want to know, but in terms of all this stuff for your brain, there's a lot of stuff out there. And if you need to see that presentation, you can email me and I can share the Zoom call with you. And then I've got somebody coming on from Parks and Recs here soon too. And so we'll be talking about just as another thing she mentioned for our brain is getting outside. And so somebody from Parks and Recs will be here in September to tell us what's going on, what all this stuff looks like. Yes.
How do we get on your email list?
I put my email address in the chat box. I don't know if you can see it here, but it is, if you could go down to the bottom of your screen and click chat, and you should look at the chat box and you should see my email address is jane.hoagland@ymcacharlotte.org.
And Hoagland, Hoagland
@ymccharlotte.org. If you email me, I will confirm. And if you have any problem getting to me, whoever brought you here, just do it through her because I'm sure she can forward it. If sometimes we transcribe stuff and we write it down, I do it all the time. So if you don't hear back from me, whoever brought you in, just ask her to help.
Thanks.
All right, guys, another great week. Thank you so much for showing up. Nice, a few new faces that I hadn't seen in a while. So I'm glad. Please share this with people. Right now, the Y has no walls. You know, we're not going to be going back there, I don't think, anytime very soon. I would like to think we were, but I'm being sort of realistic about things. There are workouts now. Just be aware if you want to, there are stuff going on. The pool's open and I know a lot of people are using the pool and there's classes. So I encourage you to take advantage. You can sign up. You need to use the app or go to the website, but there are things you can do. But if you're not comfortable with that, I completely understand. And we'll be here every week with different topics. So feel free to share and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Be safe. Be safe.
Thank you.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye.